All right, let's dive into Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power, specifically Law 2 today, which,
Yeah.
you know, it's a little bit, well, never put too much trust in friends, learn how to use enemies. Kind of a heavy one, right?
Yeah, it definitely goes against what we're, usually taught. But Green really wants us to rethink those assumptions and,
Yeah.
be more strategic in how we see the world and our relationships.
And he uses some pretty wild historical examples. Like, one that really got me was Emperor Michael III of Byzantium and his buddy, Basilius.
Oh, yeah. Michael and Vasily is a classic story of ambition, betrayal, and a whole lot of misplaced trust.
Okay, so picture this. 9th century Byzantium, palace intrigue, shifting alliances. Power's a dangerous game. Everyone's kind of looking over their shoulder. Michael, he's young,
Hmm.
kind of thrust into this emperor role. Not really sure who to trust.
Right, and then there's Basilius, starts as a simple stable groom, even saves Michael's life at one point.
So naturally, Michael's like, this guy, he's got my back. Promotes him to chief advisor, showers him with gifts, treats him like family.
And I think that's where things start to get messy. Was Basilius always power hungry? Or did all this generosity and trust from Michael, accidentally create that ambition in him?
It's like giving someone a loaded gun without even checking if they know how to use it.
Exactly. And as we know, power can corrupt.
In this case, it corrupted a friendship, turned it into this toxic power struggle.
The tragedy is, Michael was so blinded by his trust, he didn't see the warning signs. He saw Basilius's growing influence as loyalty, when it was really just a calculated power grab.
And it didn't end well for Michael, did it?
No, it did not. Basilius had Michael assassinated, took the throne for himself, and paraded Michael's head on a pike through the streets. Talk about a friend you can't trust.
Yeah, that's rough. It really makes you think twice about assuming loyalty just because of a personal connection, especially when power is involved.
Absolutely. What Michael missed is that friendship mixed with power. It's like a recipe for resentment and envy.
Because it's not always about malicious intent, right? Sometimes it's those unspoken expectations, that feeling of being indebted to someone because they've done so much for you.
Right. Resentment can fester under the surface, and it can lead to some pretty destructive outcomes.
So Michael thought he was building a bond, but he's actually creating an imbalance. And ultimately, that led to his downfall.
Yeah, it's a tough lesson to learn, but a valuable one, for sure. Makes you wonder, though, how do you actually use this law? To your advantage, not just avoid the pitfalls.
Yeah, we need a success story here, someone who knew how to play the game.
Right, exactly.
And Green gives us that with Emperor Sung of China.
Oh, yeah, Emperor Sung, now he was dealing with some serious threats. Imagine being at a banquet, supposed to be celebrating, but you're convinced everyone's trying to kill you.
Talk about a stressful dinner party.
Right. But Sung, he didn't just panic. He came up with this incredibly clever plan.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
He basically went to his generals and said, look, I get it, you're powerful, you could overthrow me, but what if instead of all that fighting, you just retired? Really comfortably.
Early retirement package. Nice.
More like the ultimate retirement package. Huge estates, wealth, total security, the works.
So he neutralized the threat by taking away their motivation to fight.
Exactly. He turned potential enemies into grateful allies.
It's like the opposite of what Michael did. Instead of showering friends with gifts, he won over his enemies with favors.
And you know what's interesting? That sense of obligation, that you spared me, now I owe you mentality, it can create a much stronger loyalty than friendship.
I never thought of it that way.
And Sung didn't stop there. He used the same tactic on rebellious kings, even potential assassins.
Wow, this is really making me rethink my whole approach to, well, everyone.
It's not about always choosing enemies over friends. It's about recognizing that sometimes. The people we see as adversaries can actually have a lot to offer.
More loyal, more motivated to prove themselves.
Right. They bring a different perspective, different strengths.
So, strategically speaking, it might make sense to work with someone who used to be your opponent.
Maybe. Think about it this way. Friendships, especially without a clear power dynamic, they can come with a lot of baggage,
Unspoken expectations, jealousy, competition.
Exactly. All that stuff can bubble up to the surface when power gets involved.
Like we saw with Michael and Basilius, it can be a recipe for disaster.
Whereas someone who was your enemy but has been shown mercy, given a chance, they tend to be more grateful, more fiercely loyal. They understand the value of your support.
Because they've been on the other side. They know what it's like to not have that support.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's not about being ruthless or cutting off all your friends. It's about being aware of the potential pitfalls and understanding that sometimes former enemies can make the best allies.
Yeah, it's about being a good judge of character, understanding motivations, and making smart decisions about who you let into your inner circle.
Okay, so how do we spot these power dynamics in our own lives? What are some red flags we should be looking for?
That's a great question. One thing is to watch out for is an imbalance of favors. If you're always doing for someone and they never reciprocate, that could be a sign they're taking you for granted.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think envy is another big one, especially if a friend starts feeling like you're pulling ahead of them.
Right, like they're being left behind.
Exactly. Envy can be really corrosive to a relationship, and it can be hard to spot because people don't usually want to admit to feeling envious.
So it's like this hidden danger lurking beneath the surface.
Yeah, and it can lead to some pretty messed up behavior.
So we need to be like emotional detectives,
Yeah.
paying attention to those subtle cues, the things that aren't being said.
Right, reading between the lines. And it's not about becoming paranoid, more like having a healthy sense of awareness.
Trust but verify, as they say.
Exactly. And sometimes verify means setting clear boundaries, being willing to say no.
Because even with close friends, you have to remember that self-interest plays a role.
Oh, absolutely. When those interests clash, even the strongest bonds can be tested.
So it's back to law too, right? The world's not black and white. And neither are our relationships.
People are complicated. A mix of motivations, some good, some not so good.
And we have to learn how to navigate that complexity, especially when power dynamics are involved.
It's about being a savvy player, even if you don't always like the rules of the game.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing our listeners should take away from all this?
I'd say be a strategic observer of human nature. Pay attention to those little details, the unspoken dynamics.
And remember, sometimes your greatest allies come from the most unexpected places.
Right, keep an open mind, but trust your instincts. And be ready to make those tough choices.
So, to everyone listening, take a look around. Who are your most trusted allies? And are there any enemies who, with the right approach, might actually become valuable assets? It's something to think about as you navigate this crazy world of power dynamics. That's it for our deep dive into Law 2 of the 48 Laws of Power. Until next time, stay sharp, stay insightful, and maybe, just maybe, keep those frenemies a little bit closer.